Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not the only thing standing between you and the cocktails, because after this is a presentation where Satan wants your soul. But now it's not going to be so hard yet. My name is Jarno. I'm from Helsinki, Finland. My friends call me Dr. Agile Fan. And it's a bit of a funny story how I'm speaking here in the first place. Now, some 3 weeks ago, myself and my colleague Niklas, who just entered the room, we were scanning whether we should go to one conference this year, still. And we looked up and there was Topconf Tallinn. And Niklas even spotted that there was a free speaker slot at this particular hour. So I emailed Chris, hey, I want to do a talk. So Chris emailed me back that unfortunately we have a great speaker coming there from UK, flying an Air Estonia airplane. So we come here. I hear this morning that she isn't coming. So I email Chris again. Am I on now? Okay, so on to the topic. A couple of words about myself. I started thinking about these tools and agile development processes back in 1999. I joined as a third-year industrial engineering and management student. I joined a group of researchers at Helsinki University of Technology. And the funny thing about that research group, it was the software process research group. The funny thing there was that they didn't get any money from the university. Instead, they sold their expertise to companies, got money from them, and then applied the rest from a governmental agency. So while this was not optimal in many cases, it was optimal in the sense that we got to work on real problems with real companies, although we were in a research setting. And back in 2005, we started thinking about, okay, now this Agile is going to be really big. Why aren't there any tools that support Agile ways of working? There was kind of Microsoft Project and there was Microsoft Excel, and well, there still is Microsoft Excel. So we thought that, okay, perhaps we start developing our own, kind of putting these thoughts that come out of the research, things that we saw that work in companies. Why don't we package them as a tool? Start developing an open source tool based on that. And years passed by, we wrote thick scientific papers and books which nobody read, but we also worked on Agile Fan. And by the time I got my PhD done, which was about linking kind of floor level Agile with product management and project portfolio management, Agile Fan had grown into a fairly successful open source project with about 10,000 users around the world. I had to decide what I'm going to do next. Shall I continue writing thick papers which nobody reads? Or shall I try to take Agile Fan out of the university context? And what I did, I got some funding. I gathered an excellent team last year. At this time we had 7 paying customer organizations. Now that we serve a kind of advanced version of Agile Fan from the cloud, we still keep the open source thing open because it's the best open source thing in this area that there still is. So it brings us a lot of traffic, and also there's a kind of, well, there are good motivations to keep that kind of tool open. And now we got about 50 companies. We are not yet driving new cars. We are nearly paying our bills, but it seems that we've done something right, so we'll continue pursuing this. That's pretty much enough about Agile Fan. I'm going to talk about what to look for when you are picking a tool for your company in the future, kind of looking from this day on 5 to 10 years. And how predicting the future is extremely hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look into the past. Technology adoption takes 20 to 30 years, kind of roughly. These numbers can be questioned, even in that article where I kind of ripped them, they were questioned. But let's see how this would apply in our field. And let's see what we could learn from that in the context of tools. 1956, Steps in Production of Large Software Systems, a paper by Mr. Herbert Bennington. that seems to be a waterfall. There's kind of specs and arrows going down and no iterations. Now, let's roll forward some 25 years, and there's a guy called Winston Royce who wrote a paper about, well, essentially the waterfall. Now, this was probably the most misunderstood paper in all software engineering research history. Actually, Winston Royce said that, hey, this thing does not work except for the most trivial projects. Actually, it looks a bit more like this. Now, what happened is that the Department of Defense in the States, okay, that's how we do it. And so we are today. But, well, you can't always get it right. Let's take another example. 1968, Conway's law basically says that the structure of a system will resemble the structure of the organization that developed it. So no matter what the design, if you have, for example, component teams, then you will have a kind of system where things are heavily dependent on each other in wrong ways, and you have long lead times, and people spend time waiting for others to deliver. Roll forward 20 years in an article called The New Product Development Game, which was actually the underpinnings of modern day Scrum. Jeff Sutherland quotes this paper that this was his inspiration. Kind of medication for overcoming Conway's law, like self-organizing cross-functional teams, close customer collaboration, sounds a bit like Agile Manifesto, doesn't it? Overlapping development phases, no sequential development phases. You should drive it by business goals, you should pay attention to people's motives, kind of the soft things which kind of Agile emphasizes this day, and kind of revised incentive systems so that they don't kind of kick you in the butt or your project's goals. So that's another example, some 20 years. Third example, wideband Delphi. Now, who has heard of wideband Delphi before? Please raise your hand. Roll forward some 30 years, who has heard of the planning poker, which is essentially wideband Delphi? 1975, Basile and Turner wrote about iterative enhancement. Now, this is so much fun that I'm going to actually read what it says there. A list that contains all the tasks that need to be performed. The list acts as a measure of the distance between the current and final implementations. Each iteration consists of selecting and removing the topmost stuff, doing them, and then updating the list accordingly. 1975, does this sound familiar to you? What is it called nowadays? Yes, exactly, the product backlog. 1984, incremental development. 1995, Evolutionary delivered the idea that the original objective is actually kind of not where you want to go in the first place, but you should kind of evolve the system, take feedback from the end users. Moving on, 1986, the spiral model, which basically says that do the high-risk things first. Okay, it says a lot of things, but that's kind of, if I compare it to incremental and evolutionary, emphasizing on doing the high-risk things first is kind of the new thing here. 1991, time-boxed iterations. Now, coming back from 1975 to 1991, we have the components of modern-day Scrum in place. The first paper about that was in 1995. Sutherland and Schreiber. So another kind of 20 years. Another example, the make command for Unix, kind of automating the builds. Roll forward, continuous integration, 20 years, and another 10 years, DevOps, which is kind of the hot word now. 1970s, actually not 1980s, visual control by Taichi Ono. 2010 Kanban for high-tech R&D. So, kind of, if we look at this, it's kind of 20 to 30 years it takes about kind of before things are so-called invented so to the degree that they're actually published in kind of major journals and so on. Of course, these things, all of the practitioners do these things way back and all the time because that's the only way actually something working gets done. But from the point that something is invented, 30 years. So, looking at this, what to look for in Agile Lean tools 5 to 10 years from now? We should look for easy-to-use support for what was hot 10 to 15 years ago. Because, well, if we think of the tool vendors, about that time it will take things to mature. So things that were invented 10 to 15 years ago, they could be mature in support tools just about now. So what was hot 10 to 15 years ago? Well, another thing, not to stress the easy to use part. I had this device back some 10 years ago, Arcos multimedia jukebox. It had a video screen, it had kind of large hard disk and buttons, and it was kind of big and clunky, and I loved it. When I got the iPad, I actually didn't use this anymore. Not a surprise, really. So kind of we should look for iPod-like usability for things that were hot 10 to 15 years ago. Okay, what was hot 10 to 15 years ago? The sprint burndown chart. It's kind of really agile basics. The Scrum community in 2002 starts measuring project velocity. So when will this big project actually be done? Basic stuff, but I would say that in my research, in my experience at companies, this kind of when this big project will be done is still kind of it's still the key issue. How are the big things that we are working on progressing? The kind of the sprint level stuff may be handled by Jira or similar tools like Trello, but the bigger perspective. Lean software development and software Kanban by Mary and Tom Poppendick. So work in progress limit, stuff like that. And Mike Cohn introduces the Scrum Task Board, 2003. Story mapping described by Jeff Patton. So story mapping is essentially about, okay, these are the big things. What small stories comprise each of them? So there's a kind of semblance of not thinking of backlog as a list, but actually a structure. So accepting that, okay, some work breakdown structure is still essential, even though we are now agile. Backlog grooming, described by Mike Cohn. Planning levels in agile development, outlined. Mike Cohn did it first. I published some things around the same time about this kind of. So there's a roadmap level, and there's the release level, and the sprint level, and the daily level. 2006, the concept of a requirements abstraction model by Swedish researchers. So the idea that, okay, we have this small technical thing here. What is the bigger entity that it belongs to? So basically we have here two groups. The first group is about support and visibility into plans and progress. How far along are we? And the second group is about planning levels and work item refinement. Work item refinement. Let's start from that. So I will now kind of go through these in a bit more detail, work item refinement, visibility, plans and progress, and discuss what it could look like from the perspective of a management tool. Okay, work item refinement. Actually, I would say that it will require infinite work item hierarchies from the tool. Not a flat list, not just 2 levels like epics and issues, but infinite. An example.
Should the graph be a non-macroic, or basically should it be in tree form, or could it be loose?
Yeah, actually the next step will be that it's a graph, that everything is related to everything. Although saying that everything is related to everything is not really it's not that interesting. Kind of the main thing that things contribute to. But I would say that dependencies, graphs. But I think looking 5 to 10 years in the future, good support for infinite item refinement is what we have to kind of be satisfied for. I will let. Does this answer your question at all?
Somewhat.
Yeah. Okay, just an example, kind of finding the product market fit for our product, visiting organizations, practitioners. I was presenting at Topconf, proposing to Chris. Chris says no, thanks to Air Estonia. So basically, even with kind of really small things, you don't want to limit your thinking to 2 levels, epics and issues, because then you end up having really small epics. And when the business guys want to see how this thing is progressing, you have lots of small epics. Hard. However, this work item hierarchy is kind of only just a partial solution. It may kind of help the discussion between the business people and the development guys. So business people say, let's go for a stronger position as the conceptually best tool. And the developers say, cool stuff, let's start doing that. The support guys, the customers, I wonder if they will ever deal with my bug report. Support, no point in reporting this complaint, as they will probably do nothing. So kind of what you need to have in addition to work item hierarchy is visibility, end-to-end visibility. That's actually what the Agile Manifesto says. Close customer collaboration. Now, Agile Manifesto and those guys were thinking about small teams working closely with the customer. When we have a larger organization with different departments and siloed departments and kind of development using Jira. Sorry for picking on Jira constantly. They're everybody's worst competitor in this field, so I can't help it. Developers use Jira, they have visibility, but will the sales guys use it? What about the customer support guys? You need end-to-end visibility. So, from a tool perspective, how this could be translated as the same work items should be allowed to be in many plans at the same time. So the red thing here is a work item. So it could be shown in a roadmap, which is sold to customers. It could be in a product area manager's own roadmap. It could belong to the guys who actually do the development in a release project. The same thing. And of course the customers and the support people and so on. Not many tools support this nowadays. Some do. I will go closer into that in a moment. This is an example that the same item can be kind of, it's still a workaround even in our tool. And you can have workarounds in many tools. But kind of that's where we should aim at. So kind of here is one customer's own roadmap, and here is the epics bubbling under, and it's the same thing. They see that, okay, this is the thing that is bubbling under, perhaps they will do it one day. Or this small bug that we have requested, okay, it's now being fixed. Okay, then into the third requirement, so to speak, what to look for. If you look at this, this is the latest edition of the famous Dean Leffingwell Scaled Agile Framework, big picture. How many people have heard of SAFe and Dean Leffingwell and this big picture? Please raise your hand. Are you awake? Have you heard of this? Please raise your hand. This is strange because in Finland this is kind of the hot word in everybody's mouths. Okay, so I don't know, has it already passed here? Okay. Well, essentially what this says is that you have one high-level plan, and then you pick a part of it and make smaller plan for the release project, and then you take items from that and make even smaller plans for the development teams. And you have many teams in parallel working on the same project. And each of them has kind of smaller plan. Another example, this is another scaled agile framework called LESS by other guys who kind of say that this is bad, this is better. Not going to go into guru fight there more deeply. Essentially it says the same thing. Picture is a bit different. It provides less detail in kind of many things for various reasons. But essentially there's a kind of big plan and the small plan and the smaller and smaller and smaller plans. Now both of these models have actually 3 levels of plans. But I say it's a matter of time before somebody devises a framework which has infinite level of plans. Why limit your thinking to 3 levels in this either? So the requirement number 3, the tool should be able to create infinite plan hierarchies. Number 4, the tool should allow teams to use what they want to use. It's important that kind of if a team wants to use Trello, how many have heard of Trello? Okay, so Trello is nice, quick, clean, simple, doesn't provide metrics, doesn't provide roadmaps, but it's really good at what it does. So if the team uses Trello, the ultimate tool should be able to pull status from the various Trello boards, put them together. If some people want to use Jira, it should pull the small epics in Jira and make them connected to bigger epics. Should integrate with your chat tools, whatever, kind of whatever the people want to use. The sales guys want to use some CRM. So basically lots of integrations. It's a kind of matter of, it's a question of faith really. I don't think any single vendor will be able to provide the best solution in all of these areas. So integrations are the thing that you should look for. Here is an example. So teams using Trello, combining the progress reports into one big graph that the managers can use. So coming back together, infinite item hierarchies, same work in many plans, infinite plan hierarchies, integrations, and usable by non-engineers. Let's take a tool deathmatch based on these. Let's start with the work item structures. I've just picked up I basically did this today because I knew that I had a bit more time than the one other time that I did this similar presentation back in October. I picked up some tools that I've heard here that what people use. So we have Trello with flat item structures. Then we have Target Process, Atlassian, Jira Pivotal Tracker. Somewhere in the middle, they have kind of 2 levels each. Of course, you can configure Jira in devious ways and link the items to each other and do 3 plugin structures, which kind of are work a bit like bubblegum. I have to stop picking on Jira. That's the last time I'll do this today. And Niklas, hit me the next time I do it in some other presentation. And then N-level item hierarchies. Rational Valley version 1. Let's take another dimension. By the way, does somebody know some tool that isn't mentioned here who does n-level item hierarchies?
Know about it.
Sorry?
Does someone know?
Yeah, kind of. I'm asking that, does somebody know some tool which does n-level hierarchies which isn't mentioned here?
Ah.
There aren't that many. It's kind of mathematically difficult to do that efficiently, and that's why not too many people are going there. So another axis, work items only in a single plan versus the same work in many plans so that different people could see their own perspective into the work. Trello, here on the left-hand side. Then there's most solutions in the middle so that you can kind of create different workarounds to do that. And then there's target process from people in Belarus. That's a cool tool. I think they have, from the start, they have taken this kind of same work item in many plans in their heart. So if you're browsing through tools and trying to pick one, take a look at target process. Then I've actually typoed there. This should be single plan hierarchy and the single flat list plans and infinite plans. But Trello pivotal tracker, like as an example, with item only in one plan, kind of one planning level. Then in the middle, with workarounds, you can go towards infinite plan hierarchies, but no native support for that. And actually, it's quite natural since the kind of these popular scaled agile frameworks have 3 levels. So the tool vendors are going after that right now. Somebody will devise the 4th level, and then they will go after that, and then the 5th level, and so on, and kind of technical depth grows. I say just do the infinite plan hierarchy. Integrations, no integrations. Well, at least everybody has some integrations. Lots of players have some integrations, and Trello has loads of integrations. So otherwise Trello is on the left every time, but here it wins because it's so easy to use. So people will want to plug different things into it. And actually kind of all, when I meet people in Finland and ask whether they use Jira or Trello, it's about 50-50. Here, you guys mostly use Jira. So look up Trello. If you have trouble with Jira, look up Trello. It's easy, it's fast. Good for collaboration. In small things, doesn't really scale to big things, but I would say that Jira doesn't either scale to that big things. Look up Trello. Then there's the easy to use, hard to use axis. Now this is kind of a matter of taste, how to place these IBM's, Rally's, Jira's version 1s. Then it gets a bit easier with Trello exceeding in the usability. So what's the result of the deathmatch? No tool passes these, but I was talking 5 to 10 years in the future. Once more, look for support for stuff that was 10 to 15 years ago when you're selecting a tool, and basically it's these things listed here. At this point, I would like to hand the mic over to you. Questions, comments?
I have a question about these levels. How many levels do you realistically use? I don't think that it will overcome.
Are you talking about plan hierarchies? Work item hierarchies?
Yeah.
I have to say that I don't know of any research into that. I could, of course, show you our customer data from our biggest client and see how many levels they have. Perhaps I don't want to do that. We have about kind of 9 levels. So 10 is actually pretty much. But there's kind of no rule saying that. at least I know that 3 levels is enough, isn't enough. What do you think? Do you have some insight into that?
I'd be around 3 or 4.
Yeah, I would put it this way, that when you know what you're doing, you can actually structure it into 3 levels. But if you think of the heart of agile, it's iterative refinement, chopping things down smaller, small enough that you can actually follow the progress. And at that point, when you don't know what you're doing, you need the space. Otherwise, you will kind of say that, okay, this is an epic, and this is an issue, and this is a sub-issue, and then this sub-issue is actually an epic. And then you kind of, if you have a strict hierarchy there, then you end up kind of, so you should at least be able to modify it easily. And I would say that the literature in this area says that kind of go way down. When you don't understand what you're doing, you need space to think. You need space to refine. And when you know what you're doing, then 3 levels is good. But the heart of development is, I guess, that most of the time we don't know what we're doing.
I would actually like to expand on that and say that from a software development perspective, that any estimation is wrong. And one nice example is there, for example, is in Facebook there is your gender specification where you can say if you're male or female. How many options do you think there should be?
I guess it depends on how specifically you're interested in those things. I don't know.
Exactly.
That's kind of a joke.
At some point, Facebook increased it to 54, so or something like that. So, yeah.
So you can mix and match.
You can be specific.
Yeah, yeah.
Some users are deeply disturbed that their specific option is not there.
Yeah.
So in this case, I want to say that from a project management perspective, you, for example, need 9 or 11 and specific tools do not enable them, you just pick another tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
About those levels, can you give some perception how big this client is who is using 9 levels?
This client, which probably has around those levels, has 400 engineers working on a kind of single product on 3 different continents. Tekla could fit in that category. I'm not talking actually about Tekla here, but we've done some research with Tekla as well. Let's talk after this. Okay. Anything else? How much sense does this make of what I'm speaking to you here?
Very much.
Thanks. Anything else about tools? Although it's kind of individuals and interactions or processing the tools.
Why do you consider Untitled Chapter as hard to use?
I don't consider it hard to use. It was somewhere kind of, it was harder than Trello, but it was actually at this end.
In the middle.
It was easier than Trello compared to the other ones.
Okay.
It's easier than Trello, but easier than the other ones and harder than Trello. Yeah. So the second easiest. Yeah.
I have a question. Generally, this technological development is exponential. Do you see that in adopting those things, we see also exponential growth? So we don't have to wait 5 to 10 years, but maybe 3 to 6 years.
When first doing this presentation, I actually thought about that. I tried to find some references whether technology adoption into the kind of the mainstream has grown faster, and there were some articles which I found which said that yes, it will become faster, and others say that it actually hasn't yet become faster. If we look at our field and the examples, it hasn't actually been faster yet. So I have no kind of, as a scientist, I have no answer to that.
I can answer from Google perspective, and did adoption rate from desktop perspective and mobile perspective. And they found that the mobile adoption is much greater, and it will surpass desktop very soon, like in a few years. Whereas desktop has been, at that time, was around over 10 years. But yeah, mobile has long surpassed desktop views.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think does Jira have a future in perspective reports?
Let me rephrase. So what do I think that Jira will do next?
Does Jira have a future in implementing all those things?
I don't know. At least they are trying hard. It will. I would say that this game will probably the market. Okay. A broader aspect. If you think that to which does agile and lean apply? Well, software, but actually all knowledge work. And the tool market is still totally fragmented. Even though Jira dominates, it dominates. If you think of the entire applicability of lean and agile, Jira has just kind of small pinch there, which is greater than the other players. But the market will kind of, if there will be a dominant solution at some point to this entire big market of all knowledge work, it will be something that is way easier to use. Now actually the latest thing that they have done is they've actually released a dumbed down version of Jira for business teams, Jira Core. So it's kind of strip away features, try to make it easier and sell it to business teams. So they realize that we can't get any business people to use this, so we have to try something else. But I would say that it may be that somebody comes kind of oikealta ohi, like we say in Finnish. How does it translate? It will be, perhaps I'm actually hoping that the dominant solution will be something that we haven't yet heard of. But it will take time. The market will be a long time fragmented.
But are there, if you take these two objectives as separate, if you combine two tools, for instance, do you see any developments currently? Because they're a bit different.
I will buy you a drink from kind of asking that question, because we have tried to tackle that by linking AgileFant with Trello. AgileFant is good with kind of metrics, work item hierarchy, stuff like that. Trello is good with usability. Trello has 10 million users, some of which may want metrics. So that's at least our take on it. Combining those tools, and there's one. The second biggest client of ours is using Jira for development, but AgileFant for road mapping. So that's just kind of some speckles of data regarding that question.
Where does your product lie? So, what is your important take, or what does it do that Jira or some other like Trello does not do? What does it improve?
Work item hierarchies, road mapping, these high-level visibility things. And it's nicer to use. No, he will hit me. But Trello is nicer to use than AgileFant, way nicer. But we're trying to go there.
Please phrase questions so if you would blame Jira.
Actually, there was a timeout sign from back there, so. Hey, thanks guys. I had a great time.